All right, let's dive into something pretty interesting today. Walmart's lobbying efforts in India. It's a story about ambition, globalization, and, well, a little bit of controversy. And our guide for this deep dive, a Harvard Business School case study, which, are always fascinating glimpses into how these big business decisions get made.
They really are.
But they're not always the full picture.
Of course not. No single source ever is.
It's like they give you the highlights, but you have to kind of read between the lines. Okay, picture this. You're Walmart, you're the king of low prices, and you've got your eyes on India.
1 billion people and a rapidly growing middle class.
Exactly. A retail dream, right?
It would seem so, yes.
But here's where things get complicated. India's retail scene is a bit of a paradox.
It is. You have this massive unorganized sector. Millions of these tiny family-run shops called kiranas.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of those.
They're like the heart and soul of Indian communities. They're everywhere. They're like the corner store, the neighborhood hub where you can get everything.
It's not just about the shopping. It's like a social thing.
Exactly. It's deeply ingrained in the culture.
And
then you have the organized retail sector. Think supermarkets, department stores, big chains.
More like what we're used to here.
Precisely. And that's a space Walmart wanted to conquer.
So why didn't they? What was stopping them?
Well, foreign direct investment, or FDI, in multi-brand retail was heavily restricted.
So they couldn't just set up a Walmart superstore on every corner.
Not that easily, no. They had to find a way to work within the rules, and, well, that's where the lobbying comes in.
Oh, so let's talk about that, because Walmart disclosed spending a whopping $25 million on lobbying efforts related to India.
Yeah, that raised a lot of eyebrows.
$25 million. That's
Yeah.
a serious commitment. But what were they actually lobbying for?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Before we get to that, I think we need to understand the political situation in India at the time.
Absolutely. It was a bit of a tug-of-war. Well, you had the ruling Congress Party pushing for economic liberalization.
Opening up markets and all that.
Exactly. And they saw FDI in retail as a way to boost the economy, create jobs.
The classic globalization argument?
Yeah, but then you had the opposition, BJP. They were more cautious, especially when it came to retail.
They were worried about the impact on those small family businesses, the kiranas.
Exactly.
So it's that classic tension between global forces and local interests.
Right, and Walmart kind of got caught in the middle of that.
Going back to that $25 million, what exactly were they trying to achieve with all that lobbying?
Well, a big chunk of that money was actually spent in the U.S.
In the U.S.?
Yes, they were trying to influence U.S. policy decisions related to India, things like trade agreements, investment policies.
So not directly bribing Indian officials. We're trying to pull strings in Washington to kind of loosen things up in New Delhi.
That's one way to put it.
Clever, but also a bit sneaky, don't you think?
It certainly raised ethical questions.
And then there was this whole debate about the 51% cap on FDI in multi-brand retail.
Oh, right. That was a major sticking point.
So Walmart couldn't just come in and own 100% of their operation.
Not initially, no. The Indian government had set this 51% cap on foreign ownership.
Meaning?
Meaning that any foreign company wanting to enter that market would need to partner with an Indian company and hold a minority stake.
So they'd have to share the pie.
Exactly.
Interesting. Some would say that's a smart move by the Indian government to ensure some level of control.
Right, to make sure Indian businesses benefit from the partnership.
Others might see it as a barrier to entry, making things difficult for foreign retailers.
It depends on your perspective.
It always does, doesn't it? It's like they were trying to play chess, but on multiple boards at the same time.
Trying to control the game from a different angle.
But, this whole idea of lobbying can feel kind of, icky.
It does have a bit of a negative connotation, doesn't it?
Like backroom deals, smoke-filled rooms,
It certainly has that image in popular culture.
So how does it actually work? Especially in the U.S., where it seems to be almost an industry in itself.
Well, in the U.S., lobbying is very much ingrained in the political process.
Like it or not.
Exactly. There are strict rules around transparency, disclosure.
So everything's above board.
In theory, yes. Companies spend billions every year trying to influence legislation.
Trying to get the laws to work in their favor.
They would say they're just making sure their voices are heard.
Right, presenting their side of the story.
But of course, it does create this uneven playing field.
Because not everyone has those billions to throw around.
Exactly, and that raises questions about fairness, equal representation.
Yeah, it makes you wonder whose interests are really being served.
It's a valid concern.
So how is lobbying viewed in India? Is it the same kind of deal?
Not quite, no. The concept of lobbying is still relatively new in India.
So it hasn't become as institutionalized?
Exactly. And there's a lot more suspicion around it.
Like people are inherently distrustful of corporate influence,
There's a feeling that it's a slippery slope towards corruption.
especially given the lack of clear regulations.
That certainly doesn't help.
So Walmart coming in with its big American lobbying playbook, maybe not the best move.
It definitely backfired.
I can imagine.
It played right into the hands of those who are already skeptical of foreign investment.
It confirmed their worst fears.
And then you add in Walmart's pre-existing reputation.
Their track record in other countries?
Yeah, the accusations of low wages, unfair labor practices, that bribery scandal in Mexico.
It all added fuel to the fire.
It made them an easy target.
So what's the lesson here for other companies looking to do business in India, or really any emerging market? Is lobbying a complete no-go?
It's more nuanced than that.
It's not black and white.
Exactly. Companies need to engage with the political system, of course.
You can't just ignore it.
But it has to be done with sensitivity, transparency.
And a genuine understanding of the local context.
Absolutely. It's about building relationships,
Right.
not buying influence.
Okay, so we've talked about the Kiranas, the big organized retail players, but what about e-commerce? That's a huge force in India too, right?
Oh, absolutely. The rise of e-commerce has completely changed the game.
Companies like Flipkart and Amazon.
They've brought in this whole new level of competition.
So it's not just Walmart versus the Kiranas anymore.
It's a much more complex landscape.
And what does that mean for the future of retail in India? Can the Kirana model survive in this new world?
That's the big question, isn't it?
It's a whole different ballgame now. So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive into Walmart's India story, what are the big takeaways for you? What should we be thinking about as we, look at the future of retail, not just in India, but globally?
Well, I think what strikes me is how this case really highlights the challenges of globalization. It's a reminder that expanding into a new market isn't just about copy-pasting your business model.
You can't just assume what worked in one place will work everywhere else.
Exactly. It's about understanding those cultural nuances, the political landscape, and, the ethical expectations of that market.
Walmart seemed to miss that memo a little bit.
They did, and it cost them.
They came in with that "we know best" attitude, and it backfired.
It did. They alienated a lot of people.
But it's not just about avoiding blunders, right? There are also huge opportunities for companies that get it right.
Of course. Think about the potential for growth, innovation, when businesses approach globalization with a bit more humility.
With a willingness to learn and adapt.
And to collaborate, Look at the companies that have been successful in India. They've often done it by partnering with local businesses.
Becoming part of the community, not just a foreign entity.
Exactly, and adapting their products to local tastes.
So it's not just what you sell, it's how you sell it.
It's about the whole approach.
And that brings us back to the Kiranas. Can they really survive alongside these big organized retail players and the e-commerce giants?
I think they can, but they have to evolve.
Adapt or die, right?
No, it's true, but it's not about abandoning their strengths.
Which are?
Well, they have that personal touch, that connection with the community. They often extend credit to their customers.
Things that big retailers and online stores just can't replicate.
It's that human element, that sense of trust and familiarity.
It's hard to put a price on that.
It really is, and that's what makes me optimistic about the future of the Kirana.
They're not just shops. They're like social institutions.
And if they can leverage those strengths while adapting to the changing landscape,
They might just come out on top.
I think so. It's not about one model replacing the other. It's about coexistence.
A more diverse retail ecosystem.
Exactly, and that's a win for everyone.
So what's the ultimate lesson here from Walmart's Indian adventure?
I think it's a reminder that business is about people, relationships, and creating value for everyone involved.
It's about seeing the bigger picture.
And remembering that globalization doesn't have to be a zero-sum game
It can be a force for good.
if we do it right.
And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive.
It's been a fascinating journey.
It really has. Thanks for joining us. And until next time, keep exploring.